Wednesday the 3rd of June. Yesterday we were looking at the idea of putting together multiples of 10% with 5%. So for example, working out 45% or 85%. We're going to take that to the next level today. But before we do that, let's have a bit of a warm-up. What is 99% of 200? Now, obviously, you could work out 90% of 200. You could work out 9% of 200 and put those two numbers together. But a much quicker way might be to think, well, 99% of 200 is 1% less than the total, and the total is 200. This is a question you actually should be able to do in your head in about 10 seconds. So I'll leave that one with you. Now, we're going to use something called a percentage web today. And this is what it looks like. Now, you're going to be drawing this out quite a few times, so you might want to freeze the video at this point and draw it out on a piece of paper. We have a circle in the middle. So, for example, if we were working out 23% of 700, we'd put the 700 in the middle. So then the total that we're working the percentage of goes in the middle. And then we have an arm coming off looking where we're finding 10% of that number. So if our number in the middle was 700, then 10% of 700 would be 70. We would put 70 in here. Now once we've found 10%, we can find 20%, we can double it. Once we found 10%, we can find 30%, we can multiply it by 3. Once we found 10%, we can find 40% by multiplying it by 4. And once we've found 10%, we can find 5% by halving it. Up this arrow, we have the 1%. So if we have 700 in the middle, 1% would be 700 divided by 100, which is 7. And once we've found 1%, we can find 2% by doubling it. 7 times 2, 14. We can find 3% by multiplying it by 3. 7 times 3, 21. We can find 4% by multiplying it by 4. 7 times 4, 28. And don't forget our known facts. If we have 700 in the middle, we can work out 50% by halving it, giving us 350. And once we've got our 50%, our 25% could be half of that again. And once we've got our 50% and our 25%, we can add them together to give us 75%. Let me show you an example. Just move this down a bit. So if we want to find 34% of 600, we put the 600 in the middle. Now 34% is made up of 30% and 4%, and we're going to use green for the multiples of 10 and brown for the units. So we partition 34% into 30% and 4%. So that's what we need to find. So to find 30% of 600, we're obviously going to go up this route, and I'm going to change things to green. So we're going to work out 10% and then 30%. Now 10% of 600 is 600 divided by 10, so we put the 60 in the circle. 3 lots of 60 will give us 30%, 180. So we've worked out our 30%. We now need to work out our 4%. We're going to change things to brown. Now to work out 4%, we're going to go up the 1% route. So first of all, we're going to work out 1% by dividing by 100. 600 divided by 100, giving us 6. And then to make our 4%, we're going to multiply that by 4 to give us 24. So we've worked out our 30%, 180. We've worked out our 4%, 24. We now can add those two numbers together, and that gives us a grand total of 204. 180 add 24. Does that make sense? 34% is less than half, and half of 600 is 300. Yes, 204 is less than 300. It sounds about right. Another known fact you might want to pick up along the way is that 33% is roughly a third. And a third of 600 is 600 divided by 3, which is 200. And obviously 204 is very close. Look at the setting out. So we write down the calculation. We partition the percentage into tens and units. We use the web to work out 30%. Don't cheat, actually copy the web out, fill it in. We will use the web to work out the units, the 4% in this case. We line them up, we line up the add, we line up the equals. Good mathematicians always set out their work correctly. Remember what Mr. Smith said. And when we add the two numbers together, we get 204. What I've got here for you are some more examples for you to try. 26% of 240, 32% of 120, 17% of 360, 43% of 700, and 62% of 400. And because the middle number is different every time, you're going to have to draw out a web each time. Don't cheat. So you've got no sheet to go with today's work. It's all written on there for you. Have a good time.